The Varnock delegation arrived on Earth with all the pomp and arrogance expected of a species that hadn't lost a war in 12 millennia. Their obsidian-colored cruiser descended into the barren plains of Wyoming, dust swirling beneath their grav plates like the sigh of a dying animal. A Varnock lieutenant, thin, blue-skinned, and high-chinned, adjusted his ocular lenses as he stepped down the ramp, sniffing disdainfully at the dry wind. He was followed by 4 others, each clad in shimmering diplomatic armor with weapons they insisted were ceremonial, though everyone knew the Varnock never traveled anywhere without enough firepower to level a moon. At the entrance of the abandoned Fort Daggerstone Museum stood a single man, leaning lazily against a half-rusted pickup, arms folded, sunglasses on despite the sun beginning to dip toward the horizon. He wore worn boots, a faded bomber jacket with a patch that read Reynolds, and a smirk that looked permanently etched into his face. "Y'all must be the alien nerds," said Mitch Reynolds without standing up. "Welcome to the gun show." Shithwe, lead Varnock, stepped forward. "We are here for an official evaluation of Terran armament. Galactic Concord Decree 947A, Section 3, Article 5. A classification exercise." Mitch spit into the dirt, then pointed toward the old steel doors behind him. "Well then, Professor Sparkleface, you're in for a treat. Let's take a walk through history." Inside, the museum smelled of oil, dust, and dead ambition. Glass cases lined the walls, each displaying relics from various eras of human warfare. There were muskets, bolt-action rifles, a World War II Thompson submachine gun, and somewhere near the back, a weathered M14 with an engraved wooden stock. Mitch talked as he walked, casually pointing out weapons as if he were guiding a group of 4th graders through a field trip. The aliens followed, each one tapping on their data pads, recording specifications, whispering in their strange, clicking language. "Humans have long relied on primitive kinetic propulsion systems," said one Varnock, curling his lips in disdain. "Chemical explosions to launch metal slugs. Inefficient. Barbaric." "Funny thing about barbarism," Mitch said, stopping by the lever-action 4570. "It tends to work real well when someone's charging you with a plasma pike." He patted the case affectionately. "This girl here, bison killer, and not the metaphorical kind." "Your civilization still uses ballistic firearms?" the leader asked, sounding genuinely horrified. Mitch's grin widened. "Oh, we've got plenty of the new toys. Railguns, coil rifles, directed energy systems. But out here in the real world, nothing says go away like 3,000 feet per second through your torso." The aliens exchanged glances, their translator modules buzzing with cross terms. The leader cleared his throat. "We observed your planetary archives. You possess helicopters, yes? Rotating blade machines?" Mitch straightened a bit. "Oh, you're about to bring up baby Betsy, aren't you?" "Betsy?" The translator struggled with the word. Mitch turned, his tone shifting. "You boys think this is the good stuff. Rifles, bayonets, handguns. You're laughing at what you think are toys. But I got something that'll make you wet your shiny space trousers." He led them down a back hallway, into a darker part of the museum, half-renovated and filled with crates. He pulled a cord, and a set of floodlights snapped on, illuminating the massive shape beneath a camo tarp. With a theatrical tug, he revealed an old UH-1 Huey, meticulously restored. The paint job was unapologetically American. Shark mouth on. The nose, flames licking the tail, and stenciled across the side in bold red were the words, "Baby Betsy." The Varnock stared. Mitch climbed onto the landing skid, slapped the side like it was a trusty horse. "Built her myself. Stripped her down, reinforced the armor, rewired the control panel for single-man operation. She's got countermeasures, dampeners, the works." The aliens looked unimpressed. "It is a flying machine with blades. Your technology is nostalgic." Mitch pointed toward the twin-mounted M134 minigun beneath the nose. Not just blades. 6,000 rounds a minute. Gentlemen, that's 100 per second. Caliber high enough to punch through your tin can cruisers. She doesn't just fly, she sings. One of the Varnock engineers scoffed. Crude, loud, limited range, primitive targeting. Yeah, but here's the thing, Mitch said, hopping down and lighting a cigar. In a real fight, you don't need all your fancy bells and whistles when you can just make the other guy eat dirt and hot lead before he finishes his sentence. He exhaled a plume of smoke that drifted lazily toward the Varnock. We do not fear outdated tools, said the leader. We fear unpredictability. Well, Mitch said, flicking the ash, then you're about to have a panic attack. Outside, the sun was down, but the floodlights lit the dry field beyond the museum. Mitch walked with a purpose, giving casual instructions to a couple of veterans lounging near the chopper. They were old, scarred, and grinning like school kids on prank day. The Varnock stood behind the safety line, data pads up, some of them live streaming to remote Galactic analysts. The lead scientist muttered something about wasting resources for the sake of nostalgia. Betsy's rotors whirred to life, slicing the air with rising tempo. Mitch stood next to her in full flight suit now, chewing gum like it was a mission. Say hello to America's little friend. The chopper lifted, off the ground, slowly at first, then tilted forward. Mitch didn't just fly. He prowled. The first target, an old tank shell retrofitted with alien armor plating, exploded under a full burst from the minigun. The sound was deafening, a chainsaw wrapped in thunder. Brass casings rained like metallic hail, and the air shimmered with dust and fury. The Varnock flinched. One dropped his datapad. The second pass obliterated an entire simulated bunker. Mitch came in low, the nose of the chopper dragging firelight across the grass. The aliens shouted, some ducking instinctively, others frozen in awe. What is this madness? One screamed over the roar. It's a statement, another whispered. A declaration of intent. After the third run, Mitch brought Betsy down. Hard, skidding to a halt just yards from the alien line. Dirt sprayed over their boots. The barrels on the minigun glowed orange. He stepped out slowly, smoke still curling from his mouth. So, he said, taking off the helmet, still think we're primitive? The Varnock leader didn't answer immediately. His translator was still trying to process the idiom, eat dirt and hot lead. Mitch looked over the crowd, half amused, half daring. The alien finally composed himself. This violates 4 interstellar engagement protocols. You modified a historical aircraft into an illegal weapon. Illegal? Mitch laughed. You guys came here to study. I gave you a practical demo. Another alien, one with broader shoulders and a deeper voice, stepped forward. You're unbalanced, dangerous, unpredictable. Exactly, Mitch said. And that's just me. Wait till you meet the rest of the crew. There was silence. Not the tense kind, more like the prelude to a collective existential crisis. Mitch turned his back and walked toward the museum, waving over his shoulder. Tour resumes at dawn. Bring earplugs and clean underwear. Behind him, the Varnock stood amid smoldering craters, shredded targets, and the ringing echo of 1,000 bullets that had shattered not just armor, but the myth of superiority. In their long history, they had catalogued over 8,000 forms of war, but nothing had prepared them for a man in aviators flying a relic machine with teeth. The old rifle had been the joke, but the Gatling gun was the punchline, and no one was laughing anymore. The Galactic Empire wasn't used to being laughed at, especially not by a human who kept a vintage lava lamp in his cockpit and referred to his helicopter as she, like it was a sacred relationship. Within 2 solar cycles, news of the Wyoming incident spread faster than bureaucratic containment protocols could handle. The footage went viral on 17 planets. Galactic analysts dissected it frame by frame, desperate to explain how a museum piece with fan blades had outperformed calibrated defense drones, The minigun's impact was classified under a new threat vector: retro-tiered unpredictable kinetics, R2K, or, as a younger analyst phrased it, really terrifying unhinged killbox. Back on Earth, Mitch Reynolds sat on the porch of an old Ranger cabin outside Fort Daggerstone, flipping through a worn copy of Guns and Ammo. The morning sun painted long shadows across the terrain, but he was already 2 coffees deep and chewing bacon like it owed him money. Across from him sat Sergeant Hector, Big Tex Morales, an ex-Marine with a chest that looked like it had its own zip code. He was oiling a 50-year-old revolver, humming something dangerously close to a Garth Brooks song. "You hear the latest?" Tex asked, not looking up. "Empire's sending down a proper team. High brass, some security division that thinks it's God's gift to tactical superiority." Mitch sipped his coffee. "Let me guess, tall, shiny, and full of opinions? They call themselves the Hexacore Enforcement Wing. Sounds like a steroid commercial." Mitch chuckled. "Hope they bring more data pads. I like watching them drop when Betsy starts to purr." The new arrivals didn't land discreetly. 6 dropships descended in perfect formation, kicking up dust storms visible from 3 towns over. They didn't bother with diplomatic cloaks or emissary robes. Instead, they emerged armored head to toe, black and silver, visors down, weapons humming low like angry insects. These weren't observers. These were cleaners, trouble silencers, fixers of things gone sideways. Their leader, Marshal Vexar, 2 meters of engineered muscle and alloy, stepped forward, eyes hidden behind a crimson visor. His voice came filtered and cold. "Mitchell Reynolds, you've violated Galactic arms. Article 72. Unauthorized demonstration of archaic war machines with malicious intent." Mitch stood, stretched, scratched his neck. "Well, to be fair, your boys asked for a tour. I just gave them the deluxe package. You have 32 hours to decommission all unauthorized systems and surrender weapons-grade vehicles for neutralization. Failure to comply will result in orbital sterilization of the site." Tex laughed loud enough to make a hawk scatter from the nearby rocks. "You bring sterilizers? For this dust bowl? Man, if radiation could make this place worse, we'd welcome it." The Marshal turned slightly. "Your sarcasm is noted. You will comply or face punitive conflict." "Conflict?" Mitch said. "That your version of foreplay?" The Marshal didn't react, but his soldiers moved in, forming a semicircle around the cabin perimeter. Non-lethal rifles clicked into ready mode. Their confidence was visible, almost arrogant. But what they didn't realize, what no algorithm in their war simulations accounted for, was that humans had a unique relationship with threats, especially threats involving deadlines. Inside the hangar, Betsy was already prepped. Tex's nephews, twins named Boone and Colt, were wrenching in tandem, cursing in alternating tones, while Leonard Skynyrd blared from a patched-up speaker. The minigun had been cleaned, refitted, and lovingly kissed with a layer of armor Mitch swore came from old alien scrap. Above the cockpit, a fresh decal had been added, a smiley face wearing sunglasses, chomping a cigar. Mitch stood beside the chopper and lit one of his own. He inhaled deeply, then exhaled with the kind of serenity only men at peace with chaos could manage. Tex tossed him a vest loaded with mags and slapped a pouch of beef jerky into his palm. "If they want to play war," Tex said, "they're about to find out what a Texas-sized no feels like." That evening, the Hexacore Enforcement Wing surrounded Fort Daggerstone. They moved with precision, zero hesitation, their scanners tuned to detect even a misplaced cough. Drones buzzed overhead, mapping trajectories, calculating angles. The Marshal stood at the edge of the field, watching silently as his countdown ticked down on a holographic panel hovering beside his gauntlet. At T-minus 5 minutes, the wind shifted. Betsy's rotors spun to life, rising in crescendo. The hangar doors burst open like a shot, and the chopper emerged bathed in golden dusk. She hovered just above the ground, framed like a war goddess stepping out of myth. The marshal's visor flickered. "Do not engage. This is your final warning." Mitch's voice came through loudspeakers retrofitted from a drive-in theater system. "Hexacore, I read you loud and clear. Here's my final transmission. Come get some." The minigun roared, carving into the dirt in a sweeping arc just shy of the first perimeter. Hexacores scattered, their formations breaking under the pressure of sheer unpredictability. Betsy didn't just fire bullets. She declared psychological warfare. Tex, positioned in the watchtower with a high-powered antique sniper rifle, took out a drone with one shot. Boone and Colt released a modified smoke bomb made from barbecue, grill canisters, and 4th of July leftovers. The battlefield turned into a chaotic mess of smoke, music, and semi-legal pyrotechnics. The marshal gave the order. "Terminate the unit. No survivors." But it wasn't that simple. The Hexacore had trained against every known combat strategy in the quadrant, but none of those included a flying machine blaring AC/DC while raining hellfire and Slim Jim wrappers. Mitch swerved through incoming plasma, firing in bursts, zigzagging low over the field. The chopper danced like a possessed steel wasp, and the aliens couldn't keep up. One squad attempted a flanking maneuver, only to find themselves pelted by a rain of golf balls, each marked with the words, "Freedom Seed," and launched from an old driving range cannon Tex had converted years ago. A Hexacore lieutenant screamed into his comm, "They're using unsanctioned tactics, irregular warfare patterns. I think one of them just threw a horseshoe." Another voice yelled back, "That's not a horseshoe, that's a homemade EMP grenade." Back in the cockpit, Mitch was laughing so hard he had to pull up to avoid crashing into a hill. The pure chaos of American backyard ingenuity was a language no empire could decode. Eventually, the chopper began to take fire. A lucky shot from a rail disruptor clipped the left rotor and Betsy wobbled midair. Mitch cursed, stabilized, and turned sharply toward the base. Tex's voice came through the comms. "Time to bring her in, brother. We made our point." Mitch didn't answer. Immediately, he scanned the field. Hexacore troops dazed, drones grounded, 2 alien officers retreating under a cloud of smoke and confusion. Then he looked at the hovering command cruiser above, still watching, still silent. He flipped one last switch and triggered the final part of the plan. From beneath the hangar, hidden for days beneath camo netting and farm equipment, rose a second Huey. Less polished, more patched together, but every bit as armed. It bore the name Big Bertha in stenciled spray paint and had a cow skull bolted to the nose. Tex piloted this one, with Boone and Colt manning the side guns, hooting like kids on Christmas morning. The alien command cruiser blinked. Then it fled orbit. Back on the ground, Marshal Vexar called the retreat. The Hexacore Enforcement Wing left Earth that night, not defeated by superior technology or strategy, but by madness dressed in denim and chewing tobacco. Later, in a dimly lit corner of a dive bar rebuilt from an old missile silo, Mitch, Tex, and the twins raised glasses of bourbon beneath a banner that read, "Don't tread on Betsy." "Well," Mitch said, swirling his drink, "that escalated in a satisfying way." Tex clinked glasses. "Think they'll come back?" "Sure," Mitch said. "Just not to Wyoming." He leaned back, the jukebox crackling out Sweet Home Alabama behind him. "But if they do, we've still got Big Bertha, the twins, homemade landmine maze, and your grandma's flamethrower, right?" Tex grinned. "Locked and loaded." Outside, the night sky blinked with distant stars. Somewhere out there, the Empire was recalculating every assumption it had about humans. Not because of nuclear weapons or hyperdrives, but because someone flew an old chopper like it was a sacred relic and made the galaxy's finest soldiers soil their compression suits. And in the quiet aftermath, one thing had become absolutely certain. The war wasn't over. It was just getting warmed up. Underneath the scorched Wyoming soil, buried, Beneath 6 feet of rock and old Cold War cement, a hatch groaned open for the first time in 30 years. Steam hissed out, part mechanical, part theatrical. The kind of thing built back when deterrence was a form of theater. Inside, floodlights flickered on to reveal a space-lined wall-to-wall with relics, each carefully preserved in military grade. Nitrogen pods, anti-aircraft missiles, foldable ballistic shields, high-caliber rifles with wood-grain handles, and hand-engraved kill notches. Above them hung a faded sign, half-lit, half-charred. "Welcome to Grandma's basement." Tex stood at the entrance with a thermos of black coffee and a cigarette he didn't light, just chewed like an old habit he wasn't ready to quit. Mitch moved past him, slow, methodical, reverent in the way a preacher might walk an abandoned cathedral. His fingers hovered over weapons like he was reading a forgotten gospel. "We ain't opened this since the Reagan days," Tex said, finally lighting his smoke. "You sure we need to go full retro?" "They sent probes this morning," Mitch replied, crouching to inspect a rust-camouflaged RPG. "Smarter this time. Silent. Camouflaged. Real sneaky. The kind of thing you use when you're not looking for a fight. You're confirming a kill." Boone and Colt joined them, shoulders dusty, eyes sharp. The twins didn't joke much anymore, not since they watched 2 drones disintegrate the local high school's football field just to test surface resistance. The Empire was escalating, and when the enemy starts sending scouts that don't talk or bleed, the war stops being a warning and becomes a promise. "Big Bertha took a hit last night," Boone said, nodding toward the scrapyard where the second Huey sat grounded. "Tail rotors mangled. Empire's using pulse disruptors now. Messes with anything older than smart tech," Colt added. "So we rewire the bird with dumber tech. No smart links, no software. We make it as analog as we are." Mitch grinned. "Perfect. Let's build something they can't predict." They got to work. Welding torches flared to life. Wrenches clanked on stripped bolts. Blueprints were scribbled on old pizza boxes and the backs of hunting licenses. They weren't restoring. They were inventing, salvaging pieces from antique war museums, agricultural machinery, even a carnival ride Tex swore used to be part of a tilt-a-whirl. The chopper was becoming something new. Not a relic, a hybrid, a contradiction. The Empire wouldn't understand it. That was the point. Meanwhile, in orbit, Commander Rahl of the Empire's Strategic Dominion Council watched Earth spin slowly beneath his station window. He hated this planet. Too chaotic, too stubborn. Every engagement felt like trying to arrest a tornado. His officers had warned him about unpredictability, but he hadn't believed humans could weaponize absurdity. He believed now. His flagship, the Dominion's Wrath, floated above Earth like a dagger suspended by guilt. On its command deck, 7 species of highly ranked strategists debated in a language so structured it could be algorithmically translated, in real time. And yet none of them could explain how 2 rotary-wing aircraft and a group of locals in baseball caps had dismantled their elite ground team. "We underestimated their cultural warfare," one Zalorian analyst said, voice like scraping metal. "They do not separate combat from entertainment. They perform war. It distracts, then it kills." Rahl turned away from the window. "Deploy containment sweep units. This time we don't capture or negotiate. We erase." On the ground, word spread fast. Mitch's crew wasn't alone anymore. Ranchers from Texas brought old tank shells, hidden in grain silos. Retired Air Force pilots flew in under commercial tags. An entire Louisiana militia arrived in duct-taped swamp boats, with phrases like "Empire My A" spray-painted on their hulls. None of them asked for orders. They simply found space and got to work. It wasn't just rebellion. It was ritual. America didn't need instructions to fight. It needed motive, and the Empire had given them one. By the end of the week, the field near Fort Daggerstone resembled a graveyard of hybrid machines. Modded, tractors with miniguns, drones duct-taped to lawnmowers, RC cars fitted with homemade EMP mines. They built like mad scientists with grudges, fueled by barbecue and vengeance. Mitch moved among them not as a general but as a foreman on a job site. He inspected builds, corrected wiring, handed out beer when morale dipped. His leadership wasn't loud. It was steady, resolute. The kind that said, "We're not dead yet, so we're not done yet." At sunset, they tested the new bird. Bertha Mark II rose into the orange sky, patched with armor from defunct satellites, rotors reinforced with repurposed mining drill blades. It hummed like a bad attitude with altitude. Mitch flew her once around the valley, dipping low enough to scatter prairie dogs and raise cheers from the ground. "She's ugly," Tex muttered. "Ugly wins wars," Mitch replied. That night, the first wave descended. Silent. Precise. Thousands of micro-drones shaped like dragonflies, equipped with facial recognition and microcharges, designed to infiltrate, tag, and detonate without warning. They came like a mist, undetectable to satellites, invisible to radar. The Empire had learned, but the humans had adapted. Boone and Colt's jerry-rigged sensor net, built from old ham, radios and weather vanes, pinged the incoming swarm 30 seconds before breach. That was enough. Dozens of redneck-engineered suppression towers fired up, emitting high-frequency sonic pulses tuned to make the drones lose coordination. Then the field lit up with shotgun blasts, bug zappers the size of car doors, and repurposed flamethrowers from the chilly cook-off disaster of '09. By morning, the ground was littered with twitching drone husks. None had made it past the perimeter. They'd survived Wave 1. In orbit, Rahl watched the tactical feed glitch into static. He stood still for a long time. "Send down the Titans." His aides shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, the Titans are meant for planetary suppression, not precision strikes. They've built a militia from farming equipment. I don't need precision. I need obliteration." The Titans dropped like meteors. 30-foot walkers, bipedal assault units, each armed with plasma lances and torsion coil cannons, designed to level cities, unstoppable, indiscriminate. And for the first time, Mitch looked worried. They watched the first Titan land near the ridge, crushing trees and boulders like paper. A second touched down near the old mine road, shaking the ground for miles. A third positioned itself on the far side of the canyon, cutting off escape. "3 walkers," Tex muttered, chewing his toothpick down to splinters. "We can't stop that kind of metal with rifles." "We don't have to," Mitch said slowly. "We just need to blind it long enough to tip it." Boone blinked. "You want to trip a Titan?" "Got a better plan?" "No," Boone admitted. "Just hoping. Yours didn't include a rope and some roller skates." They worked fast. A half-mile of cable laid across the canyon path. Lubricant from 50 oil drums poured down the ridge. Speaker towers tuned to frequencies that jammed visual sensors were planted like scarecrows. And in the canyon center, a decoy tank made entirely of fiberglass and a dead-riding lawnmower waited like bait. When the first Titan stepped into the canyon, everything activated at once. Lights blared. Sounds screamed. The oil made it slip sideways mid-stride. As it turned to recalibrate, the cable tensed under its foot, and the whole machine tilted back in slow, confused majesty. Boone detonated the charges. The ridge cracked. The Titan toppled like a falling skyscraper, crashing with such force it sent birds fleeing 3 states over. The other 2 Titans tried to adjust. One fired wildly, missing all targets, and triggering an avalanche that crushed its own stabilizers. The last turned to retreat, only to find Mitch flying Bertha Mark II straight into its sensor array, guns blazing, floodlights flashing Morse code insults. By dawn, All three Titans were smoking wrecks. Mitch landed Bertha beside the largest carcass and stepped out, boots crunching metal and dust. Around him, dozens of defenders emerged from hiding, some bleeding, some limping, but all alive. Tex walked over and handed Mitch a fresh cigarette. "Still think we should have surrendered our primitive trash?" Mitch asked. Tex lit the smoke for him. "Let's ask the wreckage." The sun rose over Wyoming like a spotlight on defiance. Across Earth, resistance cells watched the footage. From Appalachia to Alaska, people stopped being afraid. They started preparing. And in orbit, Commander Rahl turned to his aide with something approaching awe. "They don't fight with strategy," he whispered. "They fight with story. Every bullet, every chopper, every absurd contraption, it's all part of their myth." The aide didn't reply. He was already uploading evacuation codes. Because myths don't die quietly. They roar. Smoke curled from the busted hull of the last Titan, drifting across the high plains like a ghost, with nowhere left to haunt. The wreckage sizzled as coolant lines hissed their dying breath, and exposed coils spat sparks into the morning air. Mitch stood at the edge of the crumpled war machine, his boots stained with oil and blood, his eyes locked on the northern sky. He wasn't smiling. Not yet. Tex trudged up beside him, cradling a dented thermos in one hand and a sawed-off scattergun in the other. He offered the coffee. Mitch took it, sipped once, winced. "Tastes like regret and brake fluid," he muttered. "Yeah," Tex said. "But it'll keep your eyebrows twitchin'. Empire's still up there. You feel it?" "I feel it in my fillings. They're not retreating. They're calculating." Boone jogged over, half his flannel shirt burned away, looking like a man who'd wrestled a fire and won. He had a gash over one brow and a wild look in his eyes. The kind of adrenaline high that didn't need caffeine to stay airborne. "We've got satellite pings," Boone reported, tossing a battered laptop onto the back of a flipped ATV. "Low orbit. Big energy signatures. They're building something." Colt followed, dragging behind him a half-fused hunk of alien alloy. "Pick this off the Titan's command node. It's pulsing, not dead. Broadcasting." "Like a beacon?" Mitchell asked. "More like an invitation," Colt said. "It's calling home." The four of them stood there watching the sky as it began to change. The clouds turned unnatural, their shapes hardening like bone beneath the stratosphere. Blue light filtered through in irregular pulses. The air tasted metallic. Something big was coming. A high-pitched whine pierced the valley, barely audible, more felt in the teeth than heard by the ears. Then came the thunder, a single ripple across the sky, followed by the slow descent of a ship unlike anything they'd ever seen. It wasn't elegant. It was brutal, monolithic, built without aesthetics. It dropped into the upper atmosphere like a guillotine made of obsidian, the final word of a civilization that didn't believe in second chances. Mitch narrowed his eyes. "That's no command ship," Tex coughed. "That's an execution platform." Boone's knuckles whitened around the grip of his sidearm. "You think they're gonna bomb us back to the Stone Age?" "We already live there," Mitch said. "They're just late to the party." Below, the resistance swarmed, like kicked ants. Bertha Mark II was already being loaded with the last of the rotary belts. Drones were refueled with gasoline siphoned from school buses. Kids too young to shave were handed rifles with history in the barrel and duct tape on the stock. Nobody asked what the plan was. They moved like they already knew. Mitch climbed onto a stack of old oil drums and raised his voice just enough to cut through the chaos. "They're coming down to end it. They think Earth is a failed experiment, but they forgot something." Tex looked up, waiting. Mitch scanned the crowd. "We don't do surrender, we barbecue it." There was a beat of silence. Then the laughter, short, sharp, cutting through fear like a chainsaw through drywall. Spirits lifted, boots stomped. Someone hit a drum kit that hadn't seen a band since prom night '94. Even Boone cracked a grin. From the edge of the valley, dust clouds kicked up. More vehicles were arriving. Old Fords with mounted mortars, dirt bikes painted like war ponies, an actual school bus with welded armor, and a lawn flamingo impaled on the hood like a war trophy. Reinforcements. Not soldiers. Neighbors. Americans. The ship descended. It didn't touch down. Instead, it hovered 100 feet off the ground, unfolding massive appendages that pulsed with raw energy. The sky darkened. Below, the field lit up with makeshift floodlights, bonfires, and the burning wrecks of yesterday's enemy. A voice boomed from the heavens, mechanically translated, "Too perfect to be human." Resistance is statistically irrelevant. "You will surrender your planet for assimilation," Tex spat. "I surrender my ass every Thanksgiving. Don't make it a habit," the voice continued, unbothered. "Your civilization has peaked. Your weapons are obsolete. Your defiance is inefficient." Mitch raised his hand. "You hear that?" Boone frowned. "Yeah, he talks like a DMV brochure." Mitch signaled Bertha. She rose behind him, blades chopping the air into fury. The minigun on her side whining to life with the purring hunger of an angry god. She wasn't sleek. She wasn't fast. But she was ready. The Gatling mount had been reinforced, not with alien steel or smart tech, but with chains from a tow truck and bolts from a rusted oil rig. She'd been built by hand, out of stubbornness, spite, and the kind of engineering that only comes after 3 beers and a lifetime of bad decisions. Mitch climbed aboard. Colt slapped the side of the bird. "Don't let the recoil eat your teeth." Tex handed over a mixtape labeled Death Ride Volborn 1. "Mostly Van Halen and Thunder." Mitch locked eyes with Boone. "If I don't come back—" "You're not gonna die," Boone said. "You're just gonna need a new pair of pants." Bertha lifted into the air, trailing smoke and madness. The Empire ship turned, weapon banks glowing like the core of a dying star. Plasma lances locked on, targeting systems calibrated. But Bertha didn't zigzag or dip. She charged, straight into the belly of the beast. The Gatling gun opened fire. It didn't sound like a gun. It sounded like a laugh with rage behind it. A joke told through bullet casings and vengeance. The rounds tore through the ship's lower plating, cutting into systems designed to resist energy, not sheer brute force. Sparks flew. The voice faltered. "Assimilation. Process. Compromised." From below, the resistance moved. Hundreds of fighters surged forward under the cover of Bertha's scream. Explosives launched. EMP pulses fired from potato cannons. Every weapon a misfit. Every blow unpredictable. The Empire's AI couldn't account for irrationality. For chaos. For willpower born in barbecue smoke and NASCAR fumes. The execution platform listed sideways. One of its arms snapped and fell, crashing into the ground with the weight of failure. Mitch rode Bertha through the debris, circling around for another run, eyes blazing, teeth clenched, laughing like a man who'd already died once and decided not to stay down. Inside the ship, the command core fractured. Power failed. Systems looped. The final transmission from Commander Rawls stuttered over the open channel. "We should not have mocked." Bertha punched a hole straight through the main reactor. The sky erupted. Fire bloomed. The ship disintegrated mid-air, pieces tumbling into the plains like fallen gods. The blast wave leveled trees, flipped trucks, and left a crater wide enough to fit a minor league stadium. But Bertha didn't fall. She landed smoking, skids snapping, rotors coughing, but upright. Mitch crawled out, coughing, covered in soot. And laughter. Tex reached him first, slapped him on the back hard enough to dislocate an ego. "You broke their toy." Mitch nodded. "And their spirit." Across the valley, silence settled. Then the cheers. People wept, danced, hugged. The sky was clear again, no longer watched. The Empire wasn't gone, not entirely. But today, Earth had drawn a line. Later, at a makeshift campfire built from the bones of the last Titan, the crew sat shoulder to shoulder. They passed around beers and told lies that sounded like truth. "You really think they'll come back?" Colt asked. Boone shrugged. "If they do, we'll build something dumber." Tex raised a bottle. "To the old rifle." Mitch tapped his beer against it. "And the helicopter-mounted Gatling gun." They toasted under the stars. No speeches, no medals. Just the knowledge that when push came to orbital shove, it wasn't tech or tactics that saved them. It was stubbornness. It was grit. It was the beautiful madness of humanity unleashed. And somewhere, in a distant galaxy, the word Earth was scratched off a list and replaced with two others: "Do not engage."